Lifeguard saved a drowning girl at the beach, unaware she was the Mafia boss's daughter, who said, "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." The sun was setting over the beach, casting a golden hue across the waves as people lounged and enjoyed the evening breeze. It was a typical summer day in Malibu, with families building sandcastles and kids running into the water. But for Jake, a seasoned lifeguard who had spent most of his life by the ocean, this day felt different. He had seen countless rescues, but none like the one that was about to unfold. As he sat high up in the lifeguard tower, scanning the beach, a scream cut through the air. His eyes darted to the shoreline, where a girl was struggling in the water, thrashing desperately as the waves pulled her farther out. Without hesitation, Jake grabbed his rescue buoy, sprinting down the stairs, and plunged into the ocean. The water was colder than usual as he swam with powerful strokes toward the girl. Her frantic movements became more desperate as she gasped for air, her body weak from the current. When Jake finally reached her, he could barely get a grip on her flailing limbs. He wrapped his arm around her waist, trying to stabilize her, and began swimming back to shore. As he did, he noticed the girl's face, pale, her eyes wide with fear. She wasn't speaking, but Jake could see the panic in her expression. The waves were relentless, pushing against him as he fought to bring her back safely. He had no idea who she was, but he knew she needed help. When they reached the shore, Jake was exhausted. He helped the girl to the sand, checking her vitals quickly to make sure she was still conscious. She coughed up seawater, taking in deep breaths as she slowly regained her strength. Jake knelt beside her, offering a reassuring smile, but she didn't respond. Her gaze was distant, lost in thought. She seemed like a typical beachgoer, but there was something about her, something familiar. He didn't have time to dwell on it as his attention was pulled back to the beach, where a group of people had gathered, their eyes fixed on him and the girl. It was then that a man approached. He was tall, dressed in a black suit, with a presence that made everyone around him step aside. The man's eyes locked onto the girl lying on the sand, his expression unreadable. Jake stood up, instinctively moving between the man and the girl. "Is she okay?" the man asked, his voice low and smooth. Jake nodded. "She's fine. Just a little shaken up. She's going to be okay." The man's gaze remained on the girl for a moment longer before he turned to Jake. "Thank you for saving her. I'm sure she won't forget it," he said, his words laced with an underlying authority that Jake couldn't quite place. Jake wasn't used to this kind of attention. In his years of lifeguarding, he had rescued countless people, but never had someone reacted like this. There was something off about the way the man spoke. Before Jake could respond, the man turned to the girl, kneeling down beside her. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, his tone almost like a warning. The girl barely reacted, still in a daze from the near-drowning experience. Jake watched as the man helped her to her feet, his grip gentle but firm. As the man escorted the girl away, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from an ordinary rescue. He had no idea who the man was, but he wasn't just some concerned father or bystander. There was something about him that screamed power, an energy that Jake couldn't ignore. It wasn't until later that night, after his shift ended, that Jake would find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. The girl he had saved, her name was Lily, was no ordinary beachgoer. And the man who had appeared out of nowhere to take her away, he was the head of one of the most powerful mafia families in the country. Jake had just saved the daughter of a mafia boss, and had no idea that his life was about to change forever. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake stood by his lifeguard tower, his eyes scanning the beach one last time before the evening shift ended. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow across the sand, and the steady sound of waves crashing was soothing after a long day of rescues. It was moments like these that Jake relished, the calm after the storm. But tonight, his thoughts kept drifting back to Lily, the girl he had pulled from the ocean just hours ago. Her wide, frightened eyes, her pale face, the way she clung to him in the water, it all replayed in his mind like a broken record. Something about her haunted him, a connection he couldn't quite explain. He had saved many people over the years, but none had left such a lasting impression. And then there was the man who had appeared from nowhere, his demeanor cold and authoritative. There was no doubt in Jake's mind that this man wasn't just any concerned father. No, this was someone with power that demanded respect, fear even. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Lily's story than what met the eye. But what could a lifeguard like him do about it? He was just a guy who saved lives, not someone who got tangled up in dangerous situations. Yet, as the sky darkened and the stars began to emerge, Jake found himself with an undeniable urge to know more. The next day, Jake couldn't focus. His routine, usually so predictable, felt like it had been thrown off course. He kept replaying the image of Lily's face in his mind, the way she had seemed so lost and distant, almost as if she didn't belong in the world she had been living in. The way her eyes had locked onto his, yet she had said nothing. It was almost as if she had recognized something in him. After his shift ended, Jake found himself driving toward the beach again, not sure why. He just knew he needed answers. As he approached the beach, he spotted the man, the one from yesterday. He was standing near a group of expensive cars parked at the entrance. Jake's heart skipped a beat when he saw him. The man's gaze shifted toward Jake, and for a moment, they locked eyes. A chill ran down Jake's spine. There was no mistaking it. The man had recognized him. Slowly, Jake stepped out of his car, feeling the weight of the moment. "You shouldn't be here." The man's voice was calm, but there was a dangerous undertone to his words. Jake didn't know how to respond. "I'm not looking for trouble," Jake said, his voice steady. The man studied him for a moment before he spoke again. "You saved my daughter's life," he said, his tone softening just a fraction. "And for that, I owe you a debt." Jake didn't know what to make of that. A debt? What did that even mean? The man continued, his eyes never leaving Jake's. "But understand this, my world isn't like yours. You're not safe here." Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. "I didn't mean any harm," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I just did what I'm trained to do." The man's expression hardened. "That's what makes you dangerous," he said, his words laced with a cold finality. "You saved her, and now you're involved." "Involved in what?" Jake asked, confused. The man didn't answer directly, instead motioning for Jake to follow him. They walked toward a private car, the doors opening as the man gestured for Jake to get in. Hesitating for a moment, Jake looked at the man, who now seemed to radiate an undeniable power. Reluctantly, Jake got in. As the car sped off toward an unknown destination, Jake couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. The ride was long, and the tension in the air was thick, with the man sitting across from Jake, his gaze never faltering. Finally, they arrived at a large estate, the gates opening with a soft creak as they passed through. Jake couldn't believe his eyes. The mansion was enormous, with high walls surrounding it, giving it an air of isolation. "This is where we live," the man said, his voice eerily calm. "And this is where you will stay until further notice." Jake's heart raced. He had no idea what he had just walked into. All he had done was save a girl from drowning, and now he was standing in the middle of a Mafia boss's territory. What was going to happen next? Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. As Jake stepped out of the car and walked toward the grand mansion, the weight of the situation settled heavily on his chest. He had no idea what he was doing here or why he had been dragged into this world. His mind raced with questions, but the cold, calculating stare of the man who had rescued him from the beach yesterday left him feeling like an intruder in a place he didn't belong. The mansion's iron gates slowly creaked shut behind him, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Every part of this place screamed power, wealth, and danger. As they approached the front door, the man's security team, dressed in dark suits, silently observed them from the shadows. They were everywhere, standing at attention, scanning the area with sharp eyes, moving with the quiet precision of soldiers. "This way," the man said, his voice deep and steady, cutting through Jake's growing sense of unease. They entered the mansion, and Jake was immediately struck by the lavish interior. The marble floors gleamed under the soft light of crystal chandeliers, and the walls were adorned with priceless artwork that made Jake feel like he had stepped into another world entirely. He had never been in a place like this before, where luxury dripped from every corner and the air was thick with an undeniable tension. The man led him down a long hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the quiet mansion. Jake couldn't help but glance at his surroundings, trying to make sense of everything. "Where are we going?" Jake asked, his voice betraying the uncertainty he felt. The man glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "To meet my daughter," he said simply. "Lily will want to thank you for saving her." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected to meet her again so soon. The girl he had saved from the waves just yesterday. She had been so quiet, so distant. He wondered how she was doing now, if she was okay after what happened. When they reached a large door at the end of the hallway, the man paused and turned to Jake. "Wait here," he instructed, before knocking softly on the door. There was a brief silence, then a soft voice from inside. "Come in." The man opened the door and stepped inside, leaving Jake standing outside, still unsure of what was happening. He could hear muffled voices, but nothing that made sense. He shifted uncomfortably, looking around at the ornate furnishings, feeling out of place in this lavish world. Moments later, the door opened again, and the man stepped back into the hallway, motioning for Jake to come inside. "She's ready to speak with you," he said. Jake walked into the room, his heart beating faster with each step. He had expected a warm greeting, a thank you, maybe even a smile. What he didn't expect was to find Lily sitting in a plush chair by the window, her expression distant and cold. She didn't look at him as he entered, her eyes fixed on the view outside. Her father stood behind her, his gaze never leaving Jake. "Lily," the man said, his voice softer now. "This is the lifeguard who saved you." Lily slowly turned her head to face Jake, her eyes still distant. She didn't speak at first, just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Jake couldn't help but notice how different she seemed from the girl he had pulled from the water. Yesterday, she had been panicked, desperate. Now, she seemed calm, composed, almost detached. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. Jake wasn't sure how to respond. "You're welcome," he said awkwardly, his gaze flickering to her father. The man nodded in approval, then turned to Jake. "I've asked you here because I want to make sure you understand something," he said, his tone turning serious. "You saved my daughter's life, and for that, I owe you a debt. But know this, there are consequences to everything in my world. Things you don't understand yet." Jake felt a shiver of fear run down his spine. He had known something was off, but this was beyond what he had expected. The man continued, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You're involved now. You can't walk away from this." Jake's stomach twisted. He had never intended to get involved in anything dangerous. He had just been doing his job, saving a life. But now, it seemed like he had stepped into something far more complicated. "I don't want anything from you," Jake said, his voice steady despite the growing fear. "I just did what I had to do." The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "It's not about what you want. It's about what you've become a part of." His words hung heavy in the air, leaving Jake with a sinking feeling in his chest. What had he gotten himself into? Lily stood up, her gaze still fixed on him. "You should leave," she said quietly. Jake looked at her, trying to read her expression, but she was as unreadable as her father. "I can't stay here," Jake said, turning to the man. "I didn't ask for any of this." The man's gaze hardened. "You don't have a choice, Jake." Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he left the mansion's grand hall. He had just been dragged into a world of power, danger, and secrets, none of which he understood. The man, Mafia boss, had made it clear that Jake was now a part of something bigger, something he could not walk away from. As Jake stepped outside into the cool night air, he tried to clear his mind, but the weight of the situation was too much. He had just saved a drowning girl, but now he was caught up in the dark web of the Mafia. The street was quiet, but Jake could still feel the lingering presence of the mansion behind him. He looked over at the sleek black cars parked near the gates. It felt like they were watching him, waiting for him to make a move. He didn't know what to do next. His instincts told him to leave, to walk away and pretend none of this had happened, but something deep inside him told him that he couldn't. There was more at play here than he understood. As he walked toward his car, he couldn't shake the image of Lily's face from his mind. She had been so distant, so closed off when he met her, yet there was something in her eyes, something that spoke to him on a deeper level. He wasn't sure if it was pity or something else, but he knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. He hadn't saved her just to walk away. Suddenly, a shadow moved in front of him. Jake tensed, his body instinctively going into a defensive stance. "You should go back inside," a voice said from the darkness. Jake's heart skipped a beat as he turned to face the source of the voice. A man stepped forward from the shadows. He was tall, dressed in all black, with a cold, calculating expression on his face. The man's eyes were sharp, observing Jake like a predator assessing its prey. "Who are you?" Jake asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate. "I work for the boss," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you want?" Jake asked, his voice firm now. The man smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I just want to make sure you understand your place here," he said, his words carrying an unmistakable threat. "You're involved now, and you need to know that there are consequences for everything in this world." Jake's chest tightened. He had always prided himself on keeping things simple. He saved people, kept them safe. But this was a different world. A world where lives didn't matter unless you were important enough to be protected. "I don't want any part of this," Jake said, his voice rising with frustration. "I just did my job. I saved her. That's it." The man's smile faded, and his expression became hard. "You don't get to choose, Jake," he said, his tone icy. "You saved the boss's daughter. That makes you a part of this family now, and you need to understand that." Jake felt his stomach churn. He didn't want to be a part of this world. He had a life, a future that didn't involve the Mafia. "I don't want anything from you," Jake said, his voice low and determined. "I just want to go home." The man studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Fine. But remember this, there's no going back. You're in this, whether you like it or not." With that, the man turned and walked back toward the mansion, leaving Jake standing alone in the cold night. Jake watched him disappear into the shadows, the weight of his words settling on him. He had never imagined that a simple act of heroism would lead him here. But now, there was no turning back. Jake stood there for a moment, his mind racing. The world he knew was slipping away, replaced by something dark and dangerous. He couldn't just walk away. He had made a choice without even realizing it. And now, he was caught in a web he couldn't escape. As he got into his car, Jake glanced at the mansion one last time. There were no easy answers here, only choices. Choices that would define his life from this point on. He started the engine and drove away, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He didn't know where this path would lead, but one thing was clear, his life would never be the same. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake didn't know why he came back. He had told himself over and over that he was done with this world, done with the Mafia, done with Lily's family. But here he was, parked at the edge of the mansion's driveway, staring at the imposing iron gates. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white with tension. He had made his decision the night before. He would leave. He would walk away from this dangerous world and never look back. But there was something about Lily that kept pulling him back. Something in her eyes that spoke to him. Something that made him feel as though he wasn't just some lifeguard, some random guy who happened to save her life. She was different. And somehow, so was he. Jake turned off the engine and stepped out of the car. The night air was cool against his skin, the only sounds the rustling of leaves in the wind and the distant hum of the city. He walked toward the gates, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached the front door, one of the guards, who had been standing motionless by the entrance, gave him a long, assessing look before stepping aside. "You're expected," the guard said simply, before opening the door for Jake. Inside, the mansion was as grand as ever, the polished marble floors gleaming in the soft light of the chandelier. The silence was heavy, almost oppressive, as Jake was escorted through the long, ornate hallways, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Finally, they reached a door at the end of the corridor. The guard knocked lightly before entering, motioning for Jake to follow. Inside, Lily sat by a window, her figure illuminated by the soft light of the street lamps outside. She looked beautiful, as always, but there was something different about her tonight. Her usual air of detachment was gone, replaced by something that resembled sadness, or maybe fear. Jake couldn't tell. She didn't look up when he entered the room. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence between them. "Lily," Jake finally said, his voice low, almost hesitant. She looked up, meeting his gaze with those same haunting eyes. "Why did you bring me here?" Jake asked, though deep down, he already knew the answer. Lily stood up slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. She walked toward him, her eyes never leaving his face. "I didn't bring you here, Jake," she said softly. "You came on your own." Jake frowned, confusion washing over him. "What are you talking about? I didn't come on my own. I told you, I'm done with all of this." Lily took a step closer, her expression unreadable. "You're not done with me, Jake. And you never will be." Jake's heart skipped a beat as the words sank in. There it was again, the same pull, the same undeniable connection. "I don't belong here," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't my world. I don't belong in it. I'm just a lifeguard." Lily reached out and gently placed her hand on his arm. The touch sent a shockwave through him, but he didn't pull away. "You're more than that," she said, her voice barely audible. "You saved me. You made a choice that day, and now you're a part of this world, whether you like it or not." Jake wanted to argue, to tell her that he didn't want to be involved in her world, but the words stuck in his throat. It wasn't just about saving her anymore. It was about something deeper, something that neither of them could ignore. "Why are you doing this?" he finally asked. Lily sighed, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Because I don't know how else to say it," she said, her voice trembling. "I need you, Jake. I can't do this on my own. My father, he's not a man you can reason with. He doesn't care about me. But you're different." Jake swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. She needed him. She needed him in a way that went beyond the superficial, beyond the Mafia ties and the dark world she was trapped in. He didn't know what to do with that, how to process it. "I can't be a part of your world, Lily," Jake said, his voice breaking. "I can't be the one to save you." She stepped closer, her fingers brushing against his. "Then don't save me," she whispered. "Just be with me." Her words hung in the air, a challenge, an invitation, a plea. Jake's mind raced, his heart torn between the life he had known and the life she was offering him. A life that would never be simple, never be easy. But it would be a life with her. "I don't know what to do," he confessed. "I'm not a hero, Lily. I don't have the answers." She smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't need to have the answers, Jake," she said. "You just need to stay. Stay with me." The words echoed in his mind, each syllable sinking deeper into his heart. And for the first time, Jake wasn't sure what he wanted anymore. Hello, everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake woke up the next morning to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. He groggily reached over to answer it, only to find the call was from an unknown number. His first instinct was to ignore it. After all, it had been a long night of confusion, frustration, and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way Lily had looked at him last night, the way her words echoed in his mind. "Just stay with me." The call rang again, cutting through his thoughts. With a sigh, Jake picked it up. "Hello," he said, trying to sound calm, though his mind was still racing. "Jake," the voice on the other end said, low and commanding. "It's time." Jake's heart skipped a beat. The voice was unmistakable. It was the man, Mafia boss, who had made it clear that Jake was no longer just a lifeguard. "Time for what?" Jake asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. "To meet me," the man replied. "You know the place." The line went dead before Jake could say anything else. Jake sat up, his head pounding. He knew what he had to do. There was no escaping this world, no turning back. He had saved Lily's life, and now he was bound to this dangerous game, whether he liked it or not. He got out of bed and dressed quickly, trying to shake off the unease gnawing at him. He had never wanted any part of this world. The mafia, the danger, the lies. But now, it was a part of him. He couldn't deny it anymore. The mansion loomed in the distance as Jake drove toward it, the feeling of dread growing with each mile. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. He had saved a drowning girl on a whim, and now he was walking into the heart of a criminal empire. The gates of the mansion opened slowly. As Jake's car approached, the guards were already there, watching him with cold, assessing eyes. He parked and stepped out of the car, his muscles tense, his heart racing. As he walked toward the front door, he couldn't help but wonder what he was walking into. He was no longer just a lifeguard. He was a part of this world now, and the consequences of that were about to become painfully clear. Inside the mansion, the air felt heavy with tension. The grand hallway stretched out in front of him, and the soft murmur of voices echoed from the rooms beyond. The man was waiting for him, as always, his presence commanding and dominant. Jake had seen him before, at the beach, at the mansion, but now, there was something different about him. His demeanor was colder, sharper. There was no warmth in his gaze, only calculation. "Jake," the man said, his voice smooth and low, like velvet. "You've made a choice." Jake looked him in the eye. "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice firm. "You made sure of that." The man smiled slightly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You're wrong," he said, stepping closer. "You always have a choice. The problem is, you've chosen to stay. And now, you will have to live with the consequences." Jake didn't know what to say to that. He had always believed he had control over his life, over his decisions. But now, standing here in the heart of the Mafia's world, he realized how wrong he had been. "What do you want from me?" Jake asked, his voice steady despite the fear growing inside him. "I want you to understand something," the man said, his tone dropping to something darker. "You're not just a lifeguard anymore. You're a part of my family now. And families stick together. They protect each other." Jake swallowed hard. "I don't want your protection," he said, shaking his head. "I didn't ask for any of this." The man's smile widened, but it was a smile full of menace. "It doesn't matter what you want. You're already in this. And now, you will help me. You will help us." Jake felt a cold wave of realization wash over him. There was no escaping this. There was no going back to the life he had once known. He was trapped in a world of violence, power, and loyalty. And it was a world that wouldn't let him go. "Help you with what?" Jake asked, his voice low and almost defiant. The man took a step back, his expression unreadable. "We have enemies," he said, his voice cool. "And I need someone who can blend in, someone who can be trusted to handle things. You may not realize it, but you have a role to play in this." Jake's stomach turned. He had never wanted any part of this world. But now, it seemed like there was no way out. He had saved Lily's life, and in doing so, he had sealed his own fate. "What if I don't want to play this game?" Jake asked, his voice shaking with the weight of the question. The man's smile returned, but this time, it was cold and final. "You don't have a choice, Jake. You're mine now." Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake sat in the dimly lit room, staring out of the large window that overlooked the mansion's sprawling grounds. The tension in the air was thick, and every time he looked out at the darkened garden, he felt a pang of unease. He had been here for hours, caught in the web of the Mafia world he never wanted to be a part of. He didn't know how much longer he could keep pretending that he didn't belong here. His mind raced with thoughts of Lily, of the choices that had led him here, and the grim reality that there was no escape. He could still hear the words of the Mafia boss echoing in his mind. "You're mine now." Those words haunted him. They had been said with such finality, with such authority, that Jake knew they weren't just words, they were a warning. He couldn't run. He couldn't hide. And worst of all, he couldn't protect Lily from what was coming. Jake stood up, his body stiff from sitting for so long. He walked to the door of the room, his hand hovering over the knob. The weight of his decision pressed down on him. He knew he had no choice but to face the truth. He was stuck in this world now, but he couldn't help wondering if it was too late to find a way out. He stepped into the hallway, his footsteps silent on the marble floor. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning. As he walked down the hall, he passed a few rooms, their doors ajar. He couldn't help but notice the faint voices coming from one of the rooms. It sounded like Lily's voice, but it was difficult to make out the words. His heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't resist the urge to approach the door. He pushed it open slightly and peeked inside. Lily was sitting on the couch, talking with one of the men who worked for her father. Jake couldn't hear their conversation, but he could see the tension in the room. Lily looked calm, but there was something in her eyes, a deep sadness, a sense of defeat, that made Jake's chest tighten. He stepped back from the door, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a world he didn't understand. As he turned to leave, he almost ran into one of the security guards, who had been standing in the hallway, watching him. "You shouldn't be here," the guard said coldly. Jake nodded and quickly walked past him, not bothering to speak. He felt the guard's eyes on his back as he continued down the hall. He didn't know where he was going, or what he was looking for. All he knew was that he couldn't stay in this house much longer. He needed answers. He needed to understand what was happening. He needed to know why Lily's family had pulled him into their dangerous world, and why, despite everything, he couldn't walk away from her. Jake finally found himself standing in front of a large door at the end of the hallway. He had seen it earlier but had avoided it, unsure of what was behind it. But now, he couldn't ignore it any longer. He had to know what was on the other side. He raised his hand to knock, but stopped when he heard a voice on the other side. It was Lily. "Come in," she called softly, her voice faint but inviting. Jake hesitated for a moment before opening the door. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a lamp on the desk. Lily was sitting by the window, her legs crossed, staring out into the night. She didn't look at him when he entered, but she didn't need to. He could feel the tension between them. "Jake," she said quietly, finally turning to face him. "I know why you're here." Jake swallowed hard. "I'm not here to make trouble," he said, his voice steady. I don't understand. Why me? Why did your father involve me in this? Why did you ask me to stay?" Lily looked at him, her eyes full of emotion. "Because I need you," she said softly. "I don't know what I would do without you." Jake felt a pang of guilt. He had never asked for any of this. He didn't want to be part of her world, and he certainly didn't want to be dragged into the dangers her family was involved in. But as he stood there, looking into her eyes, he realized that he couldn't walk away from her. He couldn't turn his back on her now. "I don't belong here, Lily," Jake said quietly. "This isn't my world. I don't know how to protect you from this." Lily stood up and walked over to him, her hand reaching for his. "You don't have to protect me," she said, her voice trembling. "You just have to stay with me. I don't want to be alone in this." Jake hesitated for a moment before taking her hand. He didn't know what the future held or what he was getting himself into. But in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't leave her. He couldn't walk away from the woman who had changed everything for him. As they stood there, their fingers intertwined, Jake knew that their journey was just beginning. And no matter where it led, he would face it with her, for better or for worse. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake woke up the next morning with a heavy feeling in his chest. He had spent the night in the mansion, still unsure about his place in this dangerous world. The events of the previous day seemed surreal. He had been swept into something far beyond his understanding. As he lay in the bed, his thoughts kept drifting back to Lily. He couldn't deny the bond they shared, even though he knew it came with consequences. The pull of her world, the chaos, the danger, it was all too much. But he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. He sat up and rubbed his face, trying to shake off the lingering sense of dread. It was then that he heard a knock on the door. It was the same guard from last night, standing in the doorway with a stern expression. "The boss wants to see you," the guard said, his voice flat. Jake nodded, not saying anything. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew it wasn't going to be good. He got up, dressed quickly, and followed the guard down the long hallways of the mansion. The place felt more oppressive now, as if the walls were closing in on him. They arrived at a large, ornate door. The guard knocked twice before opening it, stepping aside to let Jake enter. Inside, the Mafia boss was sitting at a desk, his eyes focused on a stack of papers. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a single lamp on the desk. The atmosphere was tense, and Jake could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Jake," the boss said, looking up from his papers. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Sit down." Jake hesitated for a moment before sitting in the chair across from the boss. He could feel the man's gaze on him, analyzing him, sizing him up. "You've been here long enough to know what this world is about," the boss continued, his voice steady. "And I think it's time we talk about your role in all of this." Jake swallowed hard. He didn't want to be a part of this world. He didn't want to be tied to the Mafia, but he knew there was no way out. "I didn't ask for any of this," Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I saved your daughter. That's all I did." The boss's expression remained unchanged. "Saving my daughter was just the beginning," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You've become a part of this family now, whether you like it or not. You can't walk away." Jake's heart sank. He had known it wasn't going to be that easy, but hearing the boss say it out loud made it all feel more real. "I'm not a part of your family," Jake said, shaking his head. "I don't belong here." The boss smiled, but it was a cold, dangerous smile. "You do now. You've already made your choice by saving her. And now, you'll help protect her." Jake frowned. "Protect her? From what?" The boss leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "There are people who want my daughter dead. You've already seen what kind of people I deal with. You can't just save her and walk away. You're in this, Jake." Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wasn't a bodyguard. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a lifeguard. "I don't know how to protect her," Jake said quietly. "I'm not trained for this." The boss's expression softened slightly, but only for a moment. "That's why you'll be trained," he said. "You'll learn what you need to know. You'll be prepared." Jake didn't know how to respond. He didn't want any of this. He didn't want to be a part of the violence, the danger. But he knew it was too late. The boss was right. He was already in it. "I won't let anything happen to her," Jake said, his voice firm. The boss nodded, his gaze approving. "Good. You'll do your job. And you'll do it well." Jake stood up, his mind racing. "What now?" he asked, still unsure of what his role in this world was going to be. "Now," the boss said, standing up as well. "You learn how to protect her. You learn how to survive in this world. And when the time comes, you'll be ready." Jake nodded slowly, his heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. He had no choice but to follow through. He had no choice but to stay. As he left the room, Jake couldn't help but wonder how far this would go, how deep this world went. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same again. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. The days following Jake's meeting with the Mafia boss were a blur of intense training, uncomfortable conversations, and an undeniable growing attachment to Lily. Every morning, Jake was pushed harder than the last. He wasn't just learning to protect her physically. He was learning the dangerous, shadowed world that Lily's family lived in. The more time he spent in that world, the more he realized just how deep it went. The mansion, once a place that felt like a cage, had become a strange mixture of security and fear. He couldn't escape. Lily had made it clear that she wanted him there, that she needed him. But Jake was unsure of whether he was truly helping or if he was becoming just another pawn in a deadly game. The training sessions were intense. Jake was taught everything, from self-defense to basic surveillance techniques. He learned how to read people, how to spot danger before it arrived. But it wasn't just physical training. The Mafia boss had a specific way of teaching Jake to think like him, to see the world in a way that was shaped by power, manipulation, and control. Every conversation, every lesson, was laced with a deeper purpose. The boss didn't just want Jake to protect his daughter. He wanted him to understand the world he had entered, to understand the rules. There are no second chances, the Mafia boss told Jake one evening after a particularly grueling training session. You fail once, and you're done. Your loyalty will be tested, Jake. And when the time comes, you'll need to prove it. Jake nodded, his heart heavy with uncertainty. The weight of those words lingered in his mind. I'm not here for this, Jake said, his voice low, though he knew better than to question the boss's authority. I'm not built for this kind of life. The boss gave him a hard look, but his expression softened just a fraction. You're already in it, whether you like it or not. Jake didn't know how to respond. His life had been simple. He was a lifeguard, focused on saving people, keeping things uncomplicated. Now, everything was blurred. Every decision he made felt like it was pulling him deeper into a world he didn't belong in. And through it all, Lily was never far from his thoughts. She had become a constant presence in his life. Every time they crossed paths in the mansion, her eyes would meet his with that quiet intensity that unsettled him. She had asked him to stay, to protect her, but Jake couldn't ignore the feeling that she was hiding something more than her father's world. One evening, after a particularly brutal training session, Jake decided to find Lily. He needed answers, needed to understand what was really going on. He found her in the garden, standing by the edge of the fountain, staring into the water. Her posture was tense, her shoulders slightly hunched, as if she were trying to keep something inside. Jake hesitated for a moment, watching her, before stepping closer. Lily, he said softly, his voice breaking the silence. She didn't turn to face him right away, but when she did, her eyes were tired, filled with something Jake couldn't quite identify. I need to know what's really going on, Jake said. What is this? What does your father expect from me? Lily looked at him for a long time before she spoke. My father expects loyalty, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He expects you to protect me. And when the time comes, you'll be asked to do things that might go against everything you believe in. Jake swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. I'm not sure I can do that, he admitted. I don't want to be part of this world. Lily stepped closer, her gaze searching his. But you already are, she said softly. You can't walk away from this now. You're tied to me. You're tied to my family. Jake felt his heart race, but there was something in her eyes, something vulnerable, that made him want to protect her, even if it meant stepping further into this world he didn't understand. I'll protect you, Jake said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. But I need to know what I'm protecting you from. I need to know the truth. Lily hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. I'll tell you everything, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. But not right now. It's not safe. Jake didn't know what she meant, but he could see the truth in her eyes. Whatever it was something she wasn't ready to share. Not yet. And in that moment, Jake made a promise to her. He would stay, he would protect her, but he would also make sure that when the time came, she didn't have to face the darkness alone. The world they were in was dangerous, and Jake knew that more than anyone. But he had made his choice, and now, there was no turning back. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. The days that followed Jake's conversation with Lily were filled with tension and confusion. His days were consumed by training, learning the ways of the Mafia, how to blend in, how to protect Lily, but also how to become someone he wasn't sure he wanted to be. Each day, he spent hours under the watchful eyes of the boss's men, learning how to handle firearms, how to speak the language of the underground, and most importantly, how to protect the daughter of the most powerful man in the city. But no matter how much training he went through, there was one thing he could never escape: his growing feelings for Lily. Every moment spent with her, every look shared, made it harder to resist the connection they shared. She had become a constant presence in his life. Jake had always been a man of simple desires. He loved the beach, the quiet rhythm of the waves, the clear air. But now he found himself in a world of shadows and danger, with no way out. His attraction to Lily was undeniable, but what disturbed him was how much he cared for her. She had been thrust into a life she didn't choose, surrounded by danger and uncertainty. And Jake had been drawn into it whether he liked it or not. That evening, after another brutal training session, Jake found himself wandering the mansion's vast hallways, unsure of what to do next. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more confusing than the last. As he turned the corner, he found himself standing outside Lily's room. His heart raced as he stood there, hand resting on the doorknob. He wasn't sure what he was going to say or what was going to happen, but he knew he couldn't stay away from her. Slowly, he knocked on the door. "Lily," he called softly. A moment later, the door creaked open, and there she stood. Her face was tired, her eyes dark with worry, but there was a softness in her gaze when she saw him. "Jake," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect you." "I couldn't stay away," he said, his voice low. "Can we talk?" She nodded and stepped aside, letting him into the room. It was much smaller than the rest of the mansion, cozy even, with a large window that offered a view of the garden. She motioned for him to sit on the couch, and they both settled in, the air between them charged with unspoken words. "I know what you're thinking," she said, her voice breaking the silence. "That I'm using you. That you don't belong here, in this world." Jake looked at her, searching her face for any sign of guilt, but all he saw was honesty. "I never asked for this," he replied, his voice thick with frustration. "But I can't deny what I feel. For you." Lily's expression softened. "I never asked for any of this either," she said, her eyes downcast. "I never asked to be a part of my father's world. But it's all I know." There was a pause as Jake processed her words. She had always been so distant, so closed off, but now she was opening up, showing him a side of her he hadn't seen before. "You don't have to be a part of it," Jake said softly, reaching for her hand. "You can leave. I'll help you. We can go. Start over somewhere far away." Lily looked at him, her eyes filled with conflict. "I wish it were that easy," she whispered. "But my father's world doesn't let you leave. Once you're in it for life." Jake clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling up inside him. He hated that she was trapped in this world, just like he was. He hated that he couldn't do anything to help her escape. But there was something else, something that ran deeper than the frustration. He wanted her. He wanted to protect her, to be there for her. But was that enough? Could he really fight this fight for her? "I'll stay with you, Lily," Jake said, his voice resolute. "I'll protect you. But we need a plan. We need to figure out how to get you out of this life." Lily shook her head, a sad smile forming on her lips. "It's not that simple. My father, he won't let me go. He'll do anything to keep me in his world." Jake stood up, his hands running through his hair in frustration. "Then I'll have to deal with him," he said, determination in his eyes. "I'll make sure you're safe, no matter what it takes." Lily stood up as well, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. This isn't just about me. This is about my father's empire. If you cross him, if you try to take me away, it won't end well for either of us." Jake looked at her, his heart aching for her. He wanted to tell her that he could protect her, that they could run away together, but deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. "I don't care what it takes," Jake said, his voice fierce. "I'll fight for you, Lily. I'll make sure you don't have to live like this." Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out. "I wish it were that simple," she said softly. "But I'm scared, Jake. I'm scared of what will happen if we try to leave." Jake held her close, feeling the weight of her fears, of her uncertainty. He didn't have all the answers, but in that moment, he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her. He couldn't walk away from her, no matter how dangerous the world around them became. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered, his words a promise. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. The next few days were a blur for Jake. Every moment felt like it was slipping through his fingers, as though he was becoming someone he didn't recognize. The training had intensified, and with each passing day, the weight of his decision to stay and protect Lily grew heavier. His life, once filled with simple, straightforward days as a lifeguard, now felt entangled in a world of secrecy, power, and shadows. The Mafia boss had made it clear that Jake's place in this world was permanent. There was no turning back, no running away. The more he learned, the more he felt like a pawn in a game far bigger than he was. But his heart was still caught up with Lily. Every time they crossed paths, every stolen glance, he felt the tension between them grow. There was something about her vulnerability, her strength, her confusion, that kept him coming back. But every time he looked into her eyes, he saw the fear of being trapped in a world she couldn't escape. It was late one night when Jake found himself standing in front of Lily's room, once again torn between his desire to be with her and the reality of the situation. He had trained hard, learned everything the Mafia wanted him to, but it was becoming clear that his involvement in this world was taking a toll on him. He knocked softly on the door, trying to calm his racing heart. After a few moments, Lily's voice called out, "Come in." Jake opened the door, stepping inside to find her sitting by the window, her back to him. The room was dim, the only light coming from the city lights outside. It was a quiet, peaceful scene, yet there was an undeniable tension in the air. "Lily," Jake said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face him, and for a moment, their eyes met, and the world seemed to stand still. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at him with those eyes that held so much unspoken emotion. "Jake, what are we doing?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Jake took a deep breath, stepping closer to her. "I don't know," he admitted. "I never expected any of this. I never expected to be here, in this world, with you." She looked away, her gaze drifting out the window. "I didn't ask for this either," she said quietly. "But now I'm trapped. And you're trapped with me." Jake walked over to her, kneeling down beside her chair. "We're not trapped, Lily," he said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "We can leave. We can go somewhere far away from all of this." Lily shook her head, her eyes filled with sadness. "You don't understand. My father, this world, it's not something you can just walk away from. Once you're in for life." Jake clenched his fists at his sides, frustration building inside him. "I don't want to be a part of this," he said, his voice rising. "I want to protect you, but I don't want to be controlled by your father's empire. I want something real, something simple. But I don't know if that's even possible anymore." Lily's expression softened, her eyes brimming with tears. "I never wanted this for you, Jake," she whispered. "I never wanted to drag you into my family's world. But I need you. I need you to stay." Jake's heart ached at the raw vulnerability in her voice. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I don't want to leave you," he said, his voice breaking. "But I don't know if I can live in a world like this. A world where everything is controlled, where we're always looking over our shoulders." Lily squeezed his hand, a silent tear slipping down her cheek. "I don't want to live like this either," she said. "But I don't know how to get out. My father, he won't let me go." Jake felt a knot tighten in his chest. He didn't know how to protect her from her father's power, from the world he had unknowingly stepped into. But he knew one thing. He couldn't walk away from her. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. "I'll find a way," Jake said, his voice firm. "I'll find a way for us to be free. I won't let him control us." Lily shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "You can't fight him, Jake," she whispered. "You don't know what you're up against." Jake stood up, his hand still holding hers. "I don't care what I'm up against. I'll fight for you, Lily. I'll fight for us." Lily's smile faded as she looked at him, her eyes filled with fear. "You're already in this, Jake. You can't fight it. You can't fight him. You've made your choice by staying." Jake looked at her, his heart heavy with the realization that she was right. There was no turning back. He had chosen to stay, and now he had to live with the consequences. But no matter what happened, he couldn't leave her. He couldn't walk away from the one person who had become everything to him. "I'll protect you," he said, his voice steady with determination. "No matter what happens, I'll be here. I'll be with you. Always." The silence that followed was heavy, but in that moment, Jake knew he had made his choice. And he would do whatever it took to protect Lily, even if it meant facing the darkest parts of her world. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. The days that followed were filled with tension. Jake could feel the shift in his life. He had stayed, despite everything. And now he was not just a part of the Mafia world. He was in the eye of a storm he could no longer ignore. The mansion, once a place of luxury and comfort, now felt like a gilded cage. Everywhere he turned, there were reminders that he had no way out. Lily, for her part, had become a constant presence. Every moment they spent together only intensified the bond between them. There were still moments of uncertainty, of quiet looks exchanged in hallways, of words left unspoken. Jake knew that protecting her was more than just physical safety. It was about navigating this world, understanding the risks, the threats, and the reality of what it meant to be in this life. He had never wanted any part of it, but now it felt like he was bound by something deeper, something that connected him to her family, to this dangerous life they were both trapped in. One evening, Jake found himself in the mansion's courtyard, staring out at the sprawling gardens. It had been a long day of training and strategizing with the Mafia boss's men. His thoughts were muddled, and he needed to clear his head. The weight of everything pressing down on him felt suffocating. As he walked through the garden, he spotted Lily standing by the fountain, her gaze distant as she looked out over the water. There was something about the way she stood there, so still, that made Jake's heart ache. He had promised to protect her, but every time he saw her like this, lost, alone, and trapped in her own world, he wasn't sure he was doing enough. He approached her quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Lily," he said softly, his voice low and gentle. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and sorrow. "Jake," she whispered, her voice barely audible. There was a brief pause as they looked at each other, the silence stretching between them. "I'm scared," she said suddenly, her voice trembling. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." Jake stepped closer, his heart aching as he saw the vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm here, Lily," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "I'll never leave you. I promised I'd protect you, and I meant it." Lily shook her head, her gaze turning away from him. "You don't understand," she said softly. "This life, it's too much. I'm stuck, Jake. There's no way out. Not for me, not for you." Jake's chest tightened. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "I don't care what your father's empire is, or how deep it goes. I won't let you face it alone." Lily turned to face him, her eyes searching his, as if trying to understand him. "You think you can fight my father?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with a hint of disbelief. "You think you can fight everything he's built?" Jake met her gaze without hesitation. "I'm not going to fight him. I'm going to fight for you," he said, his voice steady. "You don't have to face this world alone. I'll be by your side, no matter what happens." There was a long moment of silence as Lily looked at him, her eyes filled with an emotion that Jake couldn't quite place. Then, slowly, she stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "Jake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can ever be free of this life. It's too dangerous. I've seen what it does to people, and I don't want you to get hurt because of me." Jake gently took her hand in his, holding it tightly. "I'm already in this, Lily. We're in this together, and I won't let anything happen to you." She looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. "You don't know how dangerous it is." Jake's expression softened, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. "I know," he said quietly, "but I also know that I can't walk away from you. Not now. Not when you need me the most." Lily's lips trembled as she fought to hold back tears. "I'm scared, Jake. I'm scared that one day, you'll have to choose between me and everything else. And I don't want to be the reason you get hurt." Jake shook his head, his grip on her hand tightening. "You're never going to be the reason I get hurt. If anything, you're the reason I'm going to fight. Fight to protect you. Fight to make sure you don't have to face this alone." Lily closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I wish I could believe that," she whispered. Jake gently wiped the tear away with his thumb. "You can't," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere. I'll protect you, no matter what it takes. The words hung in the air, a promise, a vow. In that moment, Jake knew that nothing, not even the Mafia's dangerous world, could break the bond between them. He would stay, he would fight for her, and no matter the cost, he wouldn't let her go. Hello everyone. Before we continue with today's story, I kindly ask you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's latest videos. It's fast, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means so much to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Jake stood at the edge of the mansion's balcony, the cool night air brushing against his skin as he stared out at the darkened city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, but the view felt distant, as though the world he had known was now far beyond his reach. His life had become a series of choices that led him deeper into a world he never wanted to be part of. But through it all, there was one constant, Lily. Her presence had anchored him, and now, as he stood there thinking about everything they had been through, he knew that no matter how dangerous the path ahead was, he was ready to face it for her. Their bond had grown stronger with every passing day. They had shared moments of fear, frustration, and uncertainty, but in each other, they had found something worth fighting for. Yet, despite his resolve, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The tension between them and the Mafia world had been building for weeks, and he could feel the storm brewing. Lily had been through so much, and despite everything, she still wore the weight of her family's expectations and the dangers that came with being part of the Mafia. But Jake wouldn't let her face it alone. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Jake, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to find Lily standing behind him, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the mansion's interior lights. She stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the same uncertainty that had been haunting him. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, his voice soft, trying to hide the worry he felt. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how much longer we can keep running. My father, his empire won't let us leave. No matter how much I want to, I can't escape it." Jake reached out, taking her hand gently in his. "We don't have to run anymore," he said, his voice firm. "I'm not leaving you. I'll stand by you, Lily, no matter what your father or anyone else tries to do." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for some sign of truth. "But how can you be sure?" she asked. "How can you be sure that you're not just going to get hurt because of me?" Jake cupped her face in his hands, his thumb gently brushing away a stray tear that had fallen down her cheek. "Because I'm already in this," he said, his voice steady. "I'm already involved, and there's no turning back now. But I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I promise you I'll protect you." Lily's eyes filled with emotion, and for a moment, she just stood there, her heart aching with the weight of his words. She had always known that this world was dangerous, but hearing Jake say he would protect her made her realize just how much he had changed. He wasn't just a lifeguard anymore. He was her protector, her anchor in the storm. "Jake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you." Jake shook his head, pulling her into an embrace. "You deserve everything, Lily. You deserve peace. You deserve a life without fear. And I'm going to make sure you get that, no matter what it takes." She clung to him, her hands gripping his shirt as if she were afraid to let go. "But how?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "How can we escape this life?" Jake hesitated for a moment, then pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "I don't know what the future holds," he admitted. "But I know one thing for sure. We face it together. We'll find a way out. I won't let your father control us, not anymore." Lily's breath caught in her throat, and for the first time in weeks, a small glimmer of hope sparked in her eyes. "You're serious, aren't you?" she whispered. "You really think we can escape?" Jake nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I don't care how dangerous it gets. I'll find a way, Lily. We'll be free, together." The weight of his words settled over them, and in that moment, it felt like the world had shifted. There were still dangers lurking in the shadows, still enemies they hadn't faced yet. But for the first time, Jake felt like they had a chance. They had a chance to make a future together. They didn't have to be bound by the past, by the Mafia, by the fear. "You're not alone," Jake said softly, his voice filled with determination. "I won't let you be." Lily looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. I never thought I'd find someone like you. Jake smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. I'm just a guy who wants to protect the woman he loves, he said simply. And I'll keep doing that, no matter what comes our way. The night seemed to stretch on, but in that moment, Jake and Lily knew one thing. They had each other. And that was all they needed to face whatever came next. In this gripping tale of love and danger, the boundaries of right and wrong blur in a world where trust is fragile and loyalty is tested. As the story unfolds, Jake, a lifeguard, finds himself unknowingly pulled into a dark romance when he saves a drowning girl, only to discover that she is the daughter of a powerful mafia boss. The journey into this dark romance explores themes of love, sacrifice, and the dangers of being entangled in a life controlled by power. As Jake's feelings for Lily grow, so does the danger surrounding them, forcing him to navigate a world where every decision could be their last. Amid the complexities of their connection, the tension between them becomes undeniable. Can love truly flourish in a world of shadows and threats, or will their bond be torn apart by the harsh realities of the mafia world? Follow their journey as they struggle to protect each other in this thrilling dark romance. The stakes are high, the choices are difficult, and the love between Jake and Lily is tested in ways they never expected. Their dark romance will leave you questioning everything, as they fight to survive in a world where betrayal is just a breath away. This is not just another love story. It's a dark romance that will keep you on the edge of your seat, craving more with every twist and turn. Will Jake and Lily find a way to escape the shadows of their past, or will the darkness consume them both? Tune in to discover how far they will go for love in this dark romance filled with suspense and passion.